So, you just found out you're dating a superhero. Good evening, everyone. We have gathered here tonight to answer a fundamental question that has plagued the common folk since time immemorial. How to not fumble the superhero bag. Yes, though we've had many a Rizlord in our time, there is no shortage of crusaders who have lost more partners than they do battles. I myself have been one of the very few to achieve life-lasting intimacy with a renowned superhero, and if I can do it, you can too. Now, let's start off with a little role-playing exercise. One day, you're an average everyday teenager trying to decide between the 5 Ivy League universities you were admitted to when all of a sudden, you bump into this one person with the amusingly alliterative name. You are instantly seduced by their inability to hold a basic conversation, and boom! Together until death do us part. You start digging through their personal belongings like any good partner when all of a sudden, you discover an unhealthy amount of spandex, bloodstains, and a barely there mask that doesn't hide shit. Initially, you're like, hot damn, I'm dating a dominatrix! Before you realize that it's infinitely more probable that you're dating a superhero. Now, I'm sure you have 1,000 questions rolling around in your head, all of which I will answer in due time. The important thing right now is to step back, take a deep breath, down some scotch, and not panic. The perks and demerits of dating a superhero is a fine line that must be tread very carefully, because the very last thing you want to do is trip up an Amber Alert. On the one hand, spouses of superheroes typically have an 86% mortality rate, primarily caused by an accidental discharge of fluids that the superhero didn't realize at the time was capable of burning through human flesh. This outcome should probably be avoided. On the other hand, superheroes are almost guaranteed to have an immensely lucrative career once they hit their prime. Sure, a nice chunk of it will be allocated for the required counseling they need in order to curb their PTSD, but more likely than not, they'll be happy to spoil you with all the kitchen granite and streaming services you could ever want. For those of you without a conscience, that may be a benefit you're willing to die for. Anyway, you just discovered your partner is a superhero, and 9 out of 10 times, your first reaction is to get pissed about the whole secret identity thing. And I get it. You've probably been dating for, 2-3 weeks already? Why the hell are they hiding all these closely guarded personal secrets from you, am I right? Are they actually the offspring of a fascist alien species hellbent on enslaving the human race? Probably, but that's beside the point. Statistically, the reason your partner elected to not disclose their secret identity to you is because, well, they're a giant pussy. I mean, try putting yourselves in their shoes. They're a relatively young person who just discovered they now identify as something previously unknown to them. On top of working out all of the body dysphoria, you suddenly popped into their lives as the single ray of sunshine in their otherwise scary and uncomfortable world where everything is a constant battle between who they are and what the world sees them as. Also, they might be gay, you never know. The point is, you don't want to be that asshole who gets mad because an allegorical queer narrative quote-unquote deceived you. It doesn't matter how nice you were, or how quirky your personality is, or how simp-worthy your shoulder blades are. The second you say something that could be perceived as less than accommodating, public opinion will drop you faster than a pregnant waifu. I personally guarantee it. So, what is the appropriate response then? Well, the records show that using the Oedipus method and coddling them like your own child has a near 100% success rate for diffusing the situation. Granted, there's some sample selection bias to play there, as dead parental figures are the staple for every superhero's canon event, but hey, you can't argue with the results here, people. Of course, if you choose this route, there's a notable chance that your sex life henceforth will be irrevocably fucked up in ways that Sigmund Freud probably never even counted on. If that's your deal breaker, then talking things out like mature, well-adjusted adults is a pretty good alternative. Recommended responses include, oh wow, thanks for sharing something so deeply personal with me. I'm sure that must have been very difficult, and I'm willing to make this relationship work in light of it. Or, if you already knew your partner's secret identity, you could be like, I actually suspected this whole time you were a superhero, but I didn't want to pressure you into outing yourself when you weren't ready. Personally, I've always been a big fan of the old, oh, so technically we got this whole poly thing going on here, right? If they match your quip for quip, and they always do, you are fucking in, baby! So now you're dating a superhero. What now? Well, for one thing, your human rights are now in the hands of the general public, particularly if you've been blessed with two X chromosomes, so make sure you give your partner some emotional support every now and then to trick yourself into thinking you still have self-efficacy. Once you get over that hurdle though, you're pretty much free to spend your days doing whatever the hell you want. As I'm sure you can imagine, being in a long-term relationship with a superhero lends itself to a number of privileges. Assuming your partner has the traditional Superman set, you will save a fuck ton on local travel expenses. Just remember that if your partner is airlifting you beyond a certain acceleration rate, your skin will snap off your bones like wet tissue paper and fly off into the distance in several jumbo-sized chunks, so always wear a light jacket. An additional plus is that every date night will be a gourmet dining experience, because every restaurant named Arby's will be more than happy to provide you with free meat mountains in exchange for a hero-endorsed waiver. And remember, if your partner inadvertently kills your neighbor's whole family during a villain fight, your insurance will file that as an act of demigod, so you don't gotta pay shit. Now, there are a handful of demerits that come with dating a superhero that you really only learn from first-hand experience. For one thing, it's good practice to ask at least 2 weeks into the relationship if they have any unconventional life-threatening weaknesses. The last thing you want is to get charged with involuntary manslaughter because you baked them a birthday cake, not realizing that they were allergic to numbers. Also, be cognizant of the possibility that you may have to do most of the driving in the relationship. This applies especially to speedsters, as being able to cross into Florida and back under 10 minutes without getting shot means they probably never learned how to operate a vehicle. And if at any point you both decide to settle down and have some kids, please, for the love of God, do not name your first child D's Nuts. That actually has nothing to do with superheroes, I just know my audience. Of course, that's assuming you make it to the marriage part of the relationship, and unfortunately, the sample size of that happening outside of fanfiction ended up being far too low to draw any actionable conclusions. As I previously said, you're likely to die at the hands of villainy before you hit your mid-40s, so be sure to make the most of whatever time you have left. And remember, being a superhero isn't a choice. It's a blessing. And it's a blessing because having to assume great power with great responsibility at such a young age typically means your partner never moved beyond the emotional intelligence of a 10-year-old lying about the double stuffed Oreos they had right before dinner. So please, try to be patient with them about the whole secret identity thing. They only lied because they're afraid of being rejected over the things they can't control, just like you and me. But as long as you envelop them with a nice dosage of empathy and compassion as they navigate this complicated period in their life, then perhaps one day you really will be dating that dominatrix. Yo! I'm afraid that's all the time I have for you tonight. Thank you all so much for coming to my TED Talk. You were a lovely audience, and I was so happy to share this experience with you. Before you head out, don't forget to show your support by going to patreon.com/explainwithbaddoodles and pledging $1 or $3 a month for free perks and a Discord invite. All of the proceeds will go directly to the Help Me Move Out of My Parents' House Foundation. Y'all have a wonderful night, and until then, stay tuned.